several different ministries over there.
Yes.
Can you just kind of highlight some of those connections and any future implications that can arise out of that?
Yes. All right. So when we went over there were two main churches where I was allowed to preach and present the gospel. The first church, Pastor Mike's church, called Metro Church in Nakuru. We got to spend some time with him before service, and he actually prayed for each one of us, like individually, before service, and just kind of laid hands on us to prophesy some things in our lives. So before service even started, we could already tell that the Spirit was moving, that God was present, because that was the first time we we met this guy, and he said some things about us that people who only know us for years probably know. And this was literally meeting this man for the first 30 minutes. So we knew that God was definitely in the building, and he taught us about his ministry, and he has a prison ministry. And actually, I think it's his largest prison ministry with 1,500. Was it 1,500 people or something? There's 14,000. Okay. So anyway, so they were live. So we were live, and so they got to see the service. And so there were 14,000 people viewing, and there were, I don't know, a couple of hundred or so in attendance and in person. And so just speaking with him, making that connection, great service, just great worship opportunity. I heard Pastor Jason, Pastor Corey. I was right next to Pastor Corey, and I just after the sermon was over, and it was altar call, and just turning around looking at just the people worshiping God, and everybody had chairs over their head, dancing around the church building, and it's a sight to see. Over 100-something people, in the sanctuary, just chairs over their heads, just praising God. And it was a great day. So we met him first. Through us being in the Kuru, we got to visit an orphanage there, and there was a young lady named Shameen that we were able to help with some of her medical expenses, and her mother as well, and just the appreciation that these people have for just help. I never forget once we kind of told her what we wanted to do, her mom just sprinting out the room crying. She was just overjoyed, just so happy that total strangers would come in and help her in that way. And so there were some medical supplies that she needed, some medication that she needed, and we told her that as long as we're able, we're going to just purchase those items for her, so she didn't have to worry about that. And she was like very appreciative. I remember her crying, and I remember her daughter was happy. And there's a picture that we have that hopefully next week we can get up on a slide of the little girl we're talking about. And she received a journal, and she just, a journal, and she was like just overjoyed to get this journal, so she could just write down her thoughts and draw pictures or whatever in there. And actually through that we went to the orphanage, and then we went to, there was a young lady that was with us who was an advocate for sex trafficking, and she's an author of a book. Kia is her first name. But anyway, she spoke at this women's shelter, and there were some sex traffic workers there that were present. And actually, after she spoke, a lady stood up and said that she wanted to start a Crosstown Fellowship Church in Nakuru.
Amen.
And so we're actually in the works of trying to get that done now. There's two pastors back at another church that we met, Deliverance Church, which is in a different city. It's about 3 hours from Nakuru. But they're kind of the hands and feet of this operation since we're not over there, starting to get things set up, meeting with people, and just seeing what it's going to take to kind of get this started. So through that connection, there could be a Crosstown Fellowship Church in Nakuru, Kenya, coming soon.
Well, that is exciting news. Thank you, Pastor Larry. And I would say, Pastor Jason, just as our executive pastor, what were some things that you were able to observe just with infrastructure in Kenya, and just taking advantage of different opportunities economically. Was there anything that surprised you? Anything that you think we might be able to implement here?
For sure. So, just to piggyback on the question to Pastor Larry about the connection with churches, um, we're talking about having met, multiple people who started church under a tree. Last church that we were at near Kasumu, actually that pastor was telling us that literally like he started service right outside under a tree, and they ended up buying a tenth of an acre of land there because land is relatively inexpensive depending on the area that you're in, and they just put up a tin structure. In fact, I have a picture we'll show later. The trusses for the roof were wood, and I'm not talking about 2x4s. I'm talking about they went out to a tree, saw branches, cut it to length, and nailed it to the trusses up. When you think about tree houses that we might have built, as kids in a tin roof, and the only decorative area had tile at about from this wall to us, and then the rest of it was dirt floor with plastic chairs. And just to see though how happy people were to come in and serve in that and worship in that it did something to you. And so as far as just being like I said, the capacity to be a better executive pastor here, just looking at resources we have, one, to continue the mission that we have to give what we have, because that's something that as we started, it wasn't, mind you, I monitor how much do we have back to take care of our bills this month and to do X, Y, Z, with just running the church, but to continue just pouring out everything we have, because we ran into folks over there who have far less than a lot of people around, yet in 20 minutes of meeting us, oh, y'all want to do what? Hey, we can take care of that. As he mentioned, the Deliverance Church, we met for an hour over some tea and coffee, and was just telling them the story about the young ladies that we met who wanted to start the church, and without even really mentioning what we needed to help, Pastor Rosalind from there, she's the assistant pastor, was like, we can do that, because that was her, Nakuru was near her hometown, and even 3 hours away, she said, I can take care of that for you. And then the following day, led by Spirit, he stayed home while we went out to do some other things, and ended up meeting the head pastor from that church. And for him to be willing to send his highest level assistant pastor out to help us plant a church without knowing us for not even a day, it just made us, me realize, man, how much more, can we do, with the resources that we have. But yeah, from Metro Church, them planning, I can't remember if he said 80 some odd churches that he's been planning, but you have to consider, I mean, again, that could be 4 or 5 people that he has in a place just worshiping God. That's a plant, there. From Pastor William and Pastor Winnie, when we first met them, the information they gave, they traveled, not traveled, they lived in the same area that we were at, and they came down to speak to us just to give information about, what was going on there. And we saw how their church was being, built up. We joke about the code. We're talking about as soon as those cylinder blocks went up, and they had the roof over, they were in there worshiping. Mind you, there's construction going on. When I walked in, I'm like, do I need a hard hat? Because back here, we wouldn't be able to go in, and Chief we know as well, with permits and building codes and safety, they're not gonna go in. And those people said, nope, this is fine enough. Nope, it's not falling down. Let's go worship God. And so just to see again what they're able to do, as I told the church when we were at Metro, you're a place of little resources, but you're rich in faith, rich in God. Yeah, we come from a place of abundance with all these material things, but I wonder how rich we are in faith. And so that's something I know that definitely affected me, to see the humble beginnings they had, which mimic our story, as well, but to still have the outpouring of love and support from those people, because they realize we're all on the same mission to save that one soul.
Fantastic. I'm hearing, a lot of things. Our theme this year, faith over fear. Just glad that, I hear some opportunities to be able to see that lived out through so many circumstances with communities that, that have less than we do, but they're able to do so many things.